Crypto kids, happy all-time high. I am absolutely over the moon. Bitcoin has reached a brand new all-time high. Not like a major new all-time high, but we've come up to $109,500 on weeks. We didn't reach the all-time high, but over on Coinbase, we were able to reach it. Over on Binance, we were able to reach it. So first of all, huge congratulations, because we've been longing Bitcoin ever since $77,000. So huge congrats. You would be up so much. And I would love to know if you guys are profitable from buying into Bitcoin throughout this range when we were making so many videos saying why Bitcoin is super bullish. If you don't want to miss out on future trading opportunities, subscribe to become a crypto kid, destroy the like button, and also sign up to Weeks, which is where we're trading Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, so that when we do have trading opportunities in the future, you won't miss out on them. So Bitcoin brand new all-time high, but most importantly, what is going to happen next? Well, I have some very simple analysis for you that I want to quickly share. And I also want to talk about some economic situations that is currently taking place in the world, primarily in Japan. So when you go to the 3-day time frame and look at the 1-day moving averages of the 50 and 200 SMAs, which represent the golden cross that we saw, that we experienced 24 hours ago, or in fact, now we're experiencing, but we spoke about it 24 hours ago. You can see that in this particular parabola specifically, in our current bull market cycle, we formed multiple consolidations and we broke out with a beautiful golden cross. So consolidation between March all the way until October of 2023, we break out above the resistance and we have the golden cross, and it takes Bitcoin up approximately 79% on average each time. The second time we have the consolidation is between March to November of 2024. We have the golden cross, Bitcoin breaks out of the resistance, and boom, we pump to $109,000. Now we're seeing the exact same thing. Resistance, consolidation, golden cross, and now we're breaking up from the resistance. And our expectation when you look at the global M2 money supply is a $150,000 Bitcoin by July, which is what I think will happen. And I will be keeping these positions open until $150,000. If you want to get exposure into Bitcoin, I think now is a fantastic time, especially if you want to be buying spots. And the best place to buy spot Bitcoin with card or fiat for the first time is actually by using Bybit, which is also linked in the description down below. I'm expecting a $150,000 Bitcoin by the end of July. And I think it is a pretty realistic target given the fact of the M2 money supply correlation, given the fact that we have a beautiful golden cross, and given the fact that we have entered into the final stage of our parabola. When you look into parabola pattern textbook definition, this is the image that you will get. So an X squared pattern in technical analysis is like this. So you have base 1, base 2, base 3, base 4, and then the final parabolic move upwards before seeing a bear market. When you go to the price of Bitcoin, this was base 1, base 2, this was base 3. Between base 3 and base 4, you almost doubled in price, which is what you can expect between base 3 and base 4. And then we have seen our final base, which is this one that we created over the past 3-4 months. And now we're seeing the breakout of the base, which is numbered 4. And we're going to enter, and we have entered actually, our final parabolic move. That will take us into the 150 to potentially 180 to maybe even $210,000. And that will be the top for Bitcoin in this cycle. I'm expecting it to be somewhere between Q4 of 2025 and Q1 of 2026. But regardless, we will see a top and Bitcoin will collapse by likely 60 to 70%. But that doesn't matter now because we will be going up for at least one more leg higher. And I would really consider being long on Bitcoin with low leverage and then scale into it as we see the confirmation of Bitcoin going into the 110, 112, 118, which is where the most liquidity is piled up at. Scale into your longs over the course of the next 1 to 2 weeks if you haven't been opening long positions with us already, because I think Bitcoin will go much higher and we can reach 150 by the end of July. If you want to open those positions, use the first link in the description below to sign up to Weeks or Coinflare, where you can get up to $68,000 worth in rewards. Some more bullish signs for you to consider is the inverse head and shoulder, which we spoke about for so many months. And you actually confirm the inverse head and shoulder by retesting its neckline. That is the final confirmation. And Bitcoin did that when we came down to 74. And we also tested the 50 simple moving average, which we love to do in bull markets to find support and then continue breaking higher. And something similar that we're following is actually gold. Gold is continuing to rally massively because of the Japanese bond market situation, which we will cover. That created an inverse head and shoulder too, but instead of seeing a retest, it just continued parabolically increasing. Whereas Bitcoin had to see a retest first at 74, and now we're seeing the increase that we want to see. And I think gold's price action is a huge foreshadow of what is about to happen to Bitcoin, where we go and tend into the $200,000 areas, or at least go into the higher mid $100,000 levels. So that is the inverse head and shoulder. You can also make the argument that from the top, or the initial top of 2021, all the way until $74,000 as resistance, we created a resistance line. And from about $30,000 to the 2022 bear market low, we created a support line, which ended up forming a bullish megaphone pattern. And this argument is a pretty valid one, specifically because you want to be seeing a retest to the megaphone's resistance before you continue pumping. And that is what we exactly saw. The target obviously doesn't make sense at all, but I think it is a very good validation that Bitcoin will in fact go into the mid 150s or mid 100s, and then potentially tend into the $200,000 region. And finally, ending it off with an on-chain perspective, you can see that Bitcoin added 0.33% of the overall capital that's ever invested in Bitcoin in just the past 24 hours. And this is fueled by institutional investors understanding the fact that right now, buying Bitcoin makes so much sense. I was looking for the ETF data, but Eric Balchunas highlighted that the amount of inflows into IBIT, specifically over the course of the past month, have been insane. It took IBIT from the 47th most inflowed ETF year to date all the way up to the 5th position, because institutional investors understand what is about to happen in the US in Bitcoin, and also what is about to happen to Bitcoin from a technical perspective, as it will go in and tend into the $200,000 upper bound. So institutions are buying, they understand it, and it is highlighted by on-chain data, which represents 0.33% of the total capital ever invested in Bitcoin entering the markets in the past 24 hours. And guys, look, retail isn't even here. Bitcoin is at a new all-time high. Retail cannot care less. We're at the same amount of search traffic as almost where we were back in the previous bear market. Retail doesn't care. They will care when Bitcoin's at 120 and their altcoins start pumping again. But that will be a sign that, we're likely topping out. We're doing a local top. And it'll be a good indicator to be cashing out some of your altcoins in Bitcoin. But so far, retail isn't here. So from a sentiment perspective, I think it's pretty safe to be investing into Bitcoin. Now, I know I've been saying that my target is $150,000 to $200,000, but what about a potential super cycle? Is a super cycle not on the table at all? Well, the answer to your question is yes, it is on the table. Because today specifically, when you look into the Japanese bond market, we saw 30-year bonds and 40-year bonds reach brand new all-time highs. And that is extremely concerning. It shows that the Japanese investors are incredibly cautious, and they are very, very concerned about the future of the Japanese economy, which has one of the largest GDP to debt ratios. And it's a very, very large risk. So there's super low investor demand in Japan at the moment, and there's so many fiscal concerns as the ratio exceeds 250%. The issue in Japan is pretty large, and we spoke about it in a lot more detail over on the Moon Show, so I don't want to get into too much of detail explaining exactly the whole the turn of events in the past 24 hours. But what I can tell you is that Japan is the largest buyer of Treasury assets of the US. So if Japan defaults on its debt, meaning if it cannot repay investors and refinance in a sustainable way, it's going to start liquidating American treasuries to compensate for the amount that they need to pay back to their own bond investors. So that would mean American bonds continue to implode. We saw the 30-year bond reach 5% for the first time in a long time. And if we see an implosion in American bonds, where we go into July and the Fed is not able to auction off $7.5 trillion of refinancing by issuing more debt in July, if they cannot find enough buyers for it, we could see America go into bankruptcy. The probability of this happening is relatively low, but still it is on the table. And I think the chance is higher than ever before we've ever seen. So in July, there's a strong chance that maybe America is not able to refinance the largest amount of debt refinancing it has had to done in a very, very long time, and it will ever do in a very, very long time. if it cannot find $7.5 trillion worth of Treasury buyers in July, then America could be in a great deal of trouble. We know that Moody's downgraded the Treasury assets on Monday. So if they cannot refinance to keep repaying back investors, the same pyramid scheme that they've created from the beginning of the inception of the Federal Reserve in 1913, where they issued bonds to be able to pay for the war, and then they had no money after the war to repay the interest coupons on the initial bond investors. So they issued new bonds to raise more capital and pay back the initial investors, and that continued spiraling on until the financial crisis in 2008, where it just became a on-demand money printer, and you've basically caused the national debt to surge to $36.8 trillion. Anyways, that's like a very brief context to it. If they cannot refinance the $7.5 trillion to repay back bond investors, well, guess what? The US doesn't have $7.5 trillion laying around. So it could go into bankruptcy. And if it does go into bankruptcy, investor sentiment in the US will drop like a rock. The stock market will crash. The dollar will lose tremendous amounts of value. And if the dollar loses tremendous amounts of value, first of all, because Bitcoin is traded against the dollar, it would see an automatic massive increase to the upside. Two, because Bitcoin is the best, hardest money in the world, and it's the best source of storage of wealth, unconfiscatable, finite, and uncontrollable and uninfluenceable by one singular nation. A lot of capital will fly into gold, and obviously Bitcoin too, and I think more so into Bitcoin than gold. And this potential default on American debt would cause Bitcoin to enter into a super cycle and maybe even reach $1 million by the end of 2026. But this is all incredibly hypothetical. I'm just saying it because there is a very low chance, but for the first time in a long time, there is actually a chance. So keep this in mind. But the logical prediction of where the price of Bitcoin will go is still the 150 to 200 region. From a technical analysis point of view, that is still what appears to make sense. But if we do see the US government default on its debt, then you can expect actually a super cycle this time around. But with that said, that is pretty much the end for today's video. We were able to reclaim the 5th largest asset by market cap position today, overtaking Amazon. Bitcoin treasury companies are exploding in price action, up 41.3% specifically for Metaplanet over the past week. And I mean, so many treasury companies are just going through the roof. And I think if you have a treasury company, especially in hyperinflationary countries like Turkey and Argentina, you will likely see massive gains into your company's stock value. And this is something I've been saying for a long time. I don't know for how much longer this money glitch will be around, where you can generate massive shareholder value by just announcing that you are going to be buying Bitcoin, or I mean, you just put a small amount of cash positions into Bitcoin. I don't know how much longer this money glitch will go around for. It's something like the M2 money supply correlation. So please, if you do have a publicly traded company, consider buying Bitcoin and give your shareholders immediate returns by pumping your shareholder price by a massive percentage by just investing into a singular asset. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a fantastic rest of your day. I'm unfortunately late to dinner, so I'm gonna have to cut it off here, and maybe we can do a second video later on in the evening. So guys, thank you for watching. Take care. Happy all-time high. Happy Bitcoin Pizza Day in advance. And I'll see you all on the next video very soon. Take care, and as always, bye-bye.